Welcome, unlucky traveler, to another tale from the warp. We are grateful for you to heed our call and join us in the joyous bliss of war and incur. Before we enter the world of Warhammer 40k, defile the bell of notifications and like the carnage that you are soon to behold. Subscribe your soul to this realm of chaos so we may spread our corruption across the universe. Now open yourself up to the warp and let the chaos wash over you. In the 41st millennium, there is only war. And yet, not all battles are fought with blade and bolter. Some are waged in silence, within the fragile walls of the human mind. In the depths of Hive Sithonia 9, among the endless towers of industry and the choking fog of ash and sorrow, the Emperor's light flickers. Faith, once strong, has waned beneath centuries of fear and decay. And in the cracks of that faith, something stirs. A psyker named Marielle was her name, sanctioned, bound, and blessed by the Imperium to touch the immaterium. But even the strongest of souls can tremble when the warp whispers too sweetly. This is not the story of salvation. This is the story of love, and the ruin it brought. Through the eyes of Cain Varron, guardsman and friend, and the man who loved her, you will witness the fall. The descent of a soul, the birth of a song that would damn an entire world.
There was no dawn in Hive Sithonia 9. Not in the way men remembered it from old Terra's fables. The sky above the upper spires was a bruised violet haze, veiled in smog thick enough to taste. The sun was a rumor, something that existed for those few who could afford to see it. For the rest, there was only the cold lumens of the manufactorums and the endless thrum of machinery. Commissar Cain Varron stood upon the balcony of the Arbiter's spire and watched the haze churn. The city was restless tonight. He could feel it in the metal, in the distant, unending roar of the lower levels. The press of humanity down there was a living organism, a million hearts pounding in confinement, a million dreams rotting into despair. And somewhere below, she was praying, Marielle, sanctioned psyker of the Scholastia Psychana, her soul branded and bound by the Emperor's light, or so they had told them both when she had first been assigned to his regiment. Varron still remembered the day she arrived. Head bowed, shorn hair barely concealing the burn of her sanctioning brand, eyes the pale color of moonlight on ice. She had spoken little then, but he had felt something shift in the air when she entered the command hall. Psykers always carried that weight, but hers had been different, softer, sorrowful. Now, months into their deployment on Hive Sithonia 9, that same weight had grown unbearable. It had started with the whispers. Varron had caught her speaking to herself in the silence between bombardments. Not in madness, at least. Not at first. She said it was the echo of the dead. The Hive's underlevels had been the site of a demon incursion 3 centuries past. Psychic residue still haunted the rusted cathedra and shattered shrines. The administratum had sealed the lowest levels. But in truth, the Hive was never clean. The warp clung to it like mold in damp stone. He remembered the first time he saw the fear in her eyes. They were walking through the refugee lines when a child began to scream. Marielle froze, her eyes dilating, her breath catching like someone struck. Varron reached for her shoulder, but she recoiled as if burned. H's singing, she whispered. H's singing to her. Varron had not asked who her was. He had simply ordered a medici for the child and walked her back to her quarters. But that night, as he stood guard outside her door, he heard her sobbing through the bulkhead, a sound not of grief, but of something worse, reverence. Weeks passed. The Hive's underhive began to riot. The local enforcers whispered of a sickness in the air, no plague, but a madness. Men wept and laughed in the same breath. Manufacturum workers clawed at their own skin, saying they could feel the Emperor's gaze too closely upon them. Marielle withdrew further. When he spoke to her, she no longer looked at him, but through him. The air around her shimmered faintly, as if bending to some unseen rhythm. "You must rest," he told her one night, after she collapsed in the command chapel. Her lips trembled. "I cannot," she said. "If I sleep, I hear them more clearly." The choir beneath the hive. "There is no choir," Varen said. Her smile was almost tender. "There is. Cain. You just do not listen long enough." That night he dreamed of her. He dreamed of walking the cathedral halls of the hive, the murals weeping molten light. At the altar stood Marielle, her back turned, her voice echoing in 1,000 whispers at once. When she looked over her shoulder, her eyes were vast and depthless, black pools threaded with violet fire. When he woke, the air smelled of incense and rusted blood. Varen began keeping his sidearm at hand, even when visiting her chambers. He told himself it was caution, that psychers sometimes lost control, that the black ships took them for a reason. But the truth gnawed deeper. He feared not for himself, but for her. For what the Imperium would do if they learned how far she has fallen into whatever abyss now whispered her name. He had seen her kneel before the shrine of the Emperor, murmuring prayers that twisted midway into sounds that were not of any human tongue. He had watched her bleed from the nose and smile through it, whispering of music that could shatter the soul and remake it beautiful. Sometimes, when she looked at him, he thought he saw pity. On the 41st day of unrest, the riots reached the mid-hive. The Vox networks were alive with screams. The enforces overwhelmed. Arbeit's garrisons sealed behind iron gates. Through it all, Marielle walked untouched, calm as a saint amid the storm. Varen followed her, his hand hovering near his las pistol, his heart heavy with dread. "Marielle," he called, "you cannot be here. It's not safe." She turned to him, her face half lit by lumen glow. "Do not you hear it? Cain," she whispered. "The hive is singing. Every voice, every cry, is part of the same song." He stepped closer. "You are ill. The Medici." Her laughter was soft, fragile. "The Medici cannot mend the soul. Only she can." And then she spoke the name. A sound like silk tearing in the dark. A word that made his ears bleed. He staggered, hand clutching his chest. The air around her shimmered like heat, shapes writhing at the edge of sight. For an instant, he saw the walls melt into flesh, the lights pulse like beating hearts. Then it was gone. Marielle stood before him, tears running down her cheeks. "I am sorry," she whispered. "I did not mean to show you." He caught her as she fell, her body trembling, her eyes glassy and far away. "Who is she?" "Marielle," he asked, voice shaking. "The one who loves," she said faintly. "The one who feels. She says the Emperor is blind, that he cannot love us back." Varen's blood ran cold. He ordered her confined to her quarters, though no chain could bind what plagued her now. Days blurred. The riots became purges. The hive's vox went dark. The ecclesiarchy sealed the great cathedral, chanting for deliverance. And still, in the depths, something answered. Varen began to dream in her voice. He would wake with the taste of iron on his tongue, her name echoing in the darkness. He wrote reports to superiors who would never receive them, pacing the cold halls of the spire as if motion could stave off the dread. Sometimes he thought he heard her footsteps just beyond sight, following him. Sometimes he hoped he did. The descent had begun. Varen had stopped marking the days. The upper hive had become a mausoleum. Vox silence blanketed the command decks. The last astropathic signal sent toward orbit had ended in static. Then screaming, Below, the riots had become ritual. Fire painted the lower levels in infernal hues. The Arbites had fallen back to the spire's sanctum, their armor lacquered in soot and fear. Through it all, Marielle remained in her chamber, alive, but no longer herself. He would visit at dusk, when the hive's lumens dimmed to red and the world seemed to breathe. He would stand at her door, listening to the faint cadence of her voice from within. Sometimes it was prayer, sometimes song, sometimes only the sound of someone speaking to the emptiness. He thought she would not notice him one evening when he pressed the door open. She sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by candles. Wax had pooled into thick rivers at her knees. The air trembled faintly, shadows leaned inward toward her like supplicants. Her eyes lifted. "You should not be here, Cain. I cannot stay away," he said. She smiled faintly. "You never could." He crossed the threshold. "You are not sleeping. You have barely eaten. I do not need to." Her fingers traced symbols into the air, arcs of light that lingered for an instant before fading. "It feeds me." He tried to take her hand, but stopped when he felt the hum against his palm, like touching a generator coil alive with static. "Marielle," he whispered, "whatever this is, you have to fight it." Her gaze softened, almost pitying. "You think this is possession. But what if it's revelation? What if the Emperor's silence is the illusion, and this is what's real?" Varen felt something twist inside him. "Do not. I was trained to hear his voice," she murmured. "All my life. They told me to listen. But he never spoke. Cain. Not once." And then, her voice broke, trembling into awe. "Someone else did." She pressed a hand to her chest. "She does not demand obedience, only honesty. She says the Emperor chained us to denial, that every act of restraint is a small death." He wanted to shout, to reach her, but his voice failed. The candlelight flickered, bending in unseen wind. "Marielle," he managed, "you are being deceived. That thing is a god," she interrupted softly. "A lie, or maybe both. But tell me this, Cain, when you look upon the dying and order them forward to die again, whose lie are you serving?" He had no answer, only the thudding of his heart, loud enough to drown the silence. She stood then, and the air rippled. Behind her, the candle flames elongated, twisting into thin strands that curved and wreathed like living things. "I have seen what waits beyond the veil," she whispered, "and it's beautiful." Her words carried the faint echo of another voice beneath them, something melodic and venom-sweet. Varen stepped back. "Marielle," she smiled, not at him, but at something unseen. "Shusha's listening to you. You know. She likes your sorrow." And then the candles went out. When he awoke, he was lying in the corridor. His laspistol was missing, his head ringing. The door to Marielle's chamber hung open, the air thick with copper and perfume. Inside, the walls had begun to change. The metal had softened, warped, as if it had been breathing in her presence for too long. Strange patterns rippled beneath the surface, and he swore the grooves pulsed faintly when he moved too near. Her cot was empty, her robes folded neatly atop it. Each candle burned down to the wick. On the wall above the cot, she had drawn a symbol in her own blood. Not a pentagram or sigil of chaos known to any cult. He purged something subtler, circular, almost delicate, with lines that seemed to shift when he tried to focus on them. And beneath it, 3 words written in low Gothic: "It will bloom." The days after that blurred into fever. Sleep abandoned him. He wandered the silent spire, seeing movement in every shadow. The air stank of incense and ozone, the hum of the hive growing louder, as if the city itself were whispering in its death throes. Reports came of entire hab blocks collapsing, their inhabitants vanishing in silence. Vox operators spoke of voices on open channels, reciting hymns that bled into static. Each night he heard her singing. Somewhere below. He followed once, down through the maintenance levels, past sealed bulkheads and graffiti-scrawled shrines to a dozen half-forgotten saints. The deeper he went, the louder the hum became, until the sound was more felt than heard. He found her standing in a forgotten chapel beneath the spire's foundations. The emperor's statue above the altar had been defaced, the face melted into a featureless smear. She turned when he entered, robes drifting like smoke around her. "Do you remember when you said you loved me?" she asked. He froze. "You should not." "You did," she continued, voice soft, almost kind. "The night before the siege of Kareth Prime. You thought I did not hear you. But I did." His throat constricted. "Marielle, that was a sin," she whispered. "A weakness. The Emperor forgives nothing, Cain. But she does." He shook his head, stepping closer. "This is not you." Her expression changed, pained, almost pleading. "It's always been me. You just could not bear to see it." And then the walls shuddered. Dust rained from above. The floor beneath them rippled like disturbed water. Somewhere in the distance, 1,000 voices screamed in unison. Marielle looked upward, eyes glowing faintly violet. "It's close now," she said. "The veil is thinning." He reached for her arm. "What are you doing?" "Freeing them," she murmured. "Freeing us." He barely made it back to the upper levels alive. The spire was in chaos. Vox operators screamed of demonic manifestations across the mid-hive. The air shimmered with psychic discharge. Men tore at their own faces, hearing music only they could perceive. And in the center of it all, Marielle's voice echoed through every corridor, broadcast somehow across the Vox network. She was chanting, not words he understood, but tones that resonated in the marrow. The air itself seemed to vibrate in sympathy. Every lumen flickered violet. Every heart beat faster. He could feel her inside his thoughts. In the command hall, he found a single functioning console and activated the security feed. The image that flickered to life showed the cathedral at the hive's heart. Marielle stood before the altar, her arms outstretched. Around her, hundreds of bodies knelt, enforcers, civilians, priests, all swaying in unison. Above her, reality thinned. The air was no longer air, but liquid light, trembling on the cusp of revelation. Varron stared, his breath frozen. The veil was cracking. The air in the upper spire was thick with dread. Cain Varron's lungs burned with each breath as he raced through corridors he once knew by memory. Each doorway stretched into impossibility. Each stairwell folded back upon itself. The city itself seemed alive, twisted by the psychic song Marielle now commanded. He had tried to reach her, tried to stop whatever ritual she was performing. But the deeper he went, the more the hive resisted him. The walls pulsed like flesh. The floor groaned beneath unseen weight. Light bent in unnatural ways, flickering violet and gold. Shadows coalesced into forms that whispered his name in voices both familiar and alien. He clutched his las pistol, shaking, not because he believed it would save him, but because the act of holding something real reminded him he still existed. And then he saw her. Marielle stood at the apex of the cathedral, her figure framed by the shattered remains of the emperor's statue. The altar behind her had dissolved into a lattice of bone and iridescent light. And through it, he glimpsed something that made his stomach knot in terror. A sliver of another world, writhing and infinite, painted in colors that had no names. The choir of the hive sang in unison with her voice now, 1,000 tones layered impossibly. They were not human voices, yet they spoke of grief, ecstasy, and ruin all at once. Cain felt it inside him, a vibration in the marrow, a resonance that was neither music nor madness, but both. Marielle! He shouted, his voice breaking. Stop this. You do not know what you are doing. Her eyes flicked to him. And for a moment, he saw her, the woman he loved. Pale and trembling. But the next heartbeat, the darkness behind those eyes erupted. The violet fire spread across her sclera. Her pupils gone, replaced by twin pools of infinite night. It's too late. Cain, she whispered. And the whisper was no longer hers. She has chosen. I am hers. And through me, everything will bloom. Cain staggered backward as the cathedral trembled. The floor beneath his boots began to sag, as though reality itself were yielding to some incomprehensible pressure. He heard the twisting, sucking sound of the veil tearing. And then the portal opened. It was a wound in the world. Violet light speared through the ceiling, spilling into the cathedral. The air shimmered, solid and liquid at once. And Cain glimpsed forms that should not exist. Limbs curved in impossible angles. Faces smiled with too many teeth. And eyes, so many eyes, gazed at him from every surface. The psychic song of Marielle, of the demon within her, swept over him. Memories not his own clawed at his mind. Endless pleasure and pain intertwined. Ecstasy and torment fused into something monstrous. He felt his own skull ache, as if the world itself had become a tuning fork, vibrating in the key of madness. Cain fell to his knees. His mind screamed for her to remember, to fight. Marielle, please, for a fraction of a heartbeat. The fire in her eyes faltered. He saw the flicker of the girl he had loved, the hesitant smile, the gentle hand brushing back hair. Cain, she whispered, almost tenderly. Then the shadows devoured that light. The choir of the hive erupted into a singular crescendo. Cain felt invisible fingers twist inside him. Not physical but psychic. Cold and intoxicating. Join her. They hissed. Feel everything. Become nothing. He fought, clawing at the cathedral floor, tearing at the walls as if he could anchor himself to reality. But the song was stronger. The portal pulsed, the violet light growing until it burned. He glimpsed the citizens below, trapped in the ritual's radius. Their eyes rolled back, mouths moving in sync with the demonic melody. Some were still alive, some already gone, their forms reshaping into something obscene, a reflection of Marielle's new master's will. Cain's vision swam. He stumbled to the altar's edge, reaching for her. Marielle, fight it. Remember who you are. Her head tilted, her smile now serene, terrifying. I am who I was meant to be. Cain. And you are the last to witness it. The air shimmered around her hand as she raised it. The cathedral warped. The portal surged forward, and Cain felt his body lift, suspended as if gravity itself had betrayed him. His ears rang with the psychic song. His vision blurred into violet fire and darkness. Then, finally, he understood. It had never been about control. It had never been about choice. Marielle had already become the vessel. Every hesitation, every flicker of love or doubt had been consumed. And now she was Slaanesh's instrument. He begged, screamed, wept, but she did not falter. Cain saw her move with impossible grace, each gesture rippling through the portal, through the city, through the very minds of the hive. The gates of the underlevels ruptured. The city wreathed, and 1,000 souls cried out in ecstasy and agony as Marielle's voice wove them into the pattern of the demon's will. He fell to his knees. Marielle, I love you. Her eyes met his, and for a brief instant, he glimpsed a shadow of the girl he had known. Then the portal's light struck him full in the chest. Pain unlike any other. It was not death yet, but a tearing of the self. The soul itself being pulled into the rhythm of another world. Cain felt every memory, every heartbeat, every flicker of hope shredded by ecstasy and despair, until he was nothing but a vessel of recognition, a witness to inevitability. Marielle spoke one last word. Goodbye, my love. And the world ended for him. The portal surged fully open. Hive Sithonia 9 fell silent. The upper spires shattered under violet light. The manufactorums went quiet. The Arbeits, the Administratum, the scattered regiments, they were already consumed. Minds melted into the song of Slaanesh. Bodies reshaped in devotion and horror. And at the center of it all, on the ruins of the Emperor's altar, Marielle stood radiant and terrifying. The full vessel of a demon's will. The hive had become her domain. The city her instrument. The citizens her choir. And somewhere, in the echoing void of the warp-tinged spire, Cain Varen's final thought lingered. I loved her, and she loved me last. Silence is not the absence of sound. In the cathedral at Hive Sithonia 9, silence had become a living thing. Thick as iron and sweet as rot. The fires of rebellion and riot had been swallowed by violet light. The citizens, the enforcers, the last remnants of the Arbeits, none remained free. Each had been woven into the lattice of the demon's will. Bodies and minds reshaped to harmonize with Marielle's song. Cain Varen stood at the edge of the shattered altar. Alone. His body was torn. His uniform ragged. Flesh marked with burns from psychic discharges that had scoured the spire. His heart pounded. But it was not only blood. His soul, if it could still be called that, ached with the remnants of love, grief, and terror. The portal pulsed above Marielle. A wound in reality through which the infinity of Slaanesh's domain bled into the material world. Colors impossible to name twisted and flowed across every surface, shaping themselves into impossible forms. Whispers of the damned and the damned to be wrapped around him, urging him to kneel, to surrender, to join. Cain lifted his head. Marielle descended the altar steps, robes drifting like smoke in a windless room. Her face, still beautiful, still hers in some half-remembered way, was framed by violet fire. Her eyes, twin abysses, drank the light from the lumen above. You fought long enough, Cain, she said. Her voice was soft, intimate, yet threaded with a resonance that made the floor tremble beneath him. I tried to save you. Once. But the song must be complete. He swallowed hard, gripping the remnants of his last pistol like a lifeline. Marielle, please, you are still in there. Fight it. You are still you. She tilted her head, considering him, not with malice, but inevitability. I am more than I ever was. And I am her. I am Slaanesh's mirror. I am. Her smile broadened, terrifying in its serenity. Everything. Cain's vision blurred. He could see the citizens of the hive below, kneeling in ecstasy and horror, their bodies reshaped into grotesque echoes of human form, yet somehow beautiful. Music, impossibly layered and discordant, wove through the air, bending perception, bending reality. You loved me, she whispered, and I loved you last. The world around him trembled as she lifted a hand. Reality itself bowed to her will. Cain fell to his knees, his mind screaming in protest as the psychic force tore at him. He felt his own memories, every shared moment, every whispered secret, every brush of hands in the quiet of their quarters, being absorbed into her. He tried to scream her name, tried to plead, tried to strike, but his body moved as if through water. The air thickened, pressing down, suffocating, intoxicating. The portal flared brighter, violet light washing over him, over the spire, over the entire hive. And then, with a final gesture, she touched him. Pain exploded like a nova in his mind. Cain felt the entirety of his being unravel. Threads of soul and thought ripped apart. His vision fractured into shards of violet and gold. And he saw her clearly at last, not the girl he loved, not the woman he had tried to save, but a vessel of the warp. Radiant, terrible, eternal. He whispered her name one last time. And then the song consumed him. When the violet light faded from the upper spire, Hive Cethonia 9 had fallen. The city's spires and manufactorums were unrecognizable, warped and reshaped by the portal's influence. Citizens knelt in silent worship or moved as instruments in the great psychic symphony. Bodies altered in ways both beautiful and horrifying. Voxers carried the song of Marielle, now fully the demon's conduit, to every corner of the hive, and at the cathedral's heart. She stood alone. The portal above her stabilized, a bridge between the mortal world and the infinite dominion of Slaanesh. Light shimmered across her skin, casting shadows that wreathed independently, echoing the forms beyond the veil. She raised her arms and the hive sang with her. Every citizen, every soldier, every voice was hers now, bound to her will. The city itself became an extension of her mind, twisting, reshaping, alive. She closed her eyes and inhaled deeply. The song swelled, and through it, she felt the echoes of Cain Varan. His love, his desperation, his final act of defiance, all woven into her consciousness. A single tear traced down her cheek. Not for the hive, not for herself, but for the one who loved her enough to witness the end. The hive had fallen. The portal had opened. And the psyker who had once been human was no more. Only the song remained. And in that song, Cain's final thought lingered. I loved her, and she loved me last.